Welcome to Murder Road Trip. I'm your host, Haley. Joining me on today's road trip is Lainey, the host of the True Crime Fan Club podcast and the We're All Just Pretending podcast. Lainey, can you tell us about both of your podcasts?
Sure. True Crime Fan Club is a storytelling one-person format type show. I cover cases mostly so far have been in Texas or the Dallas area. That pretty much explains that. But We're All Just Pretending is my brand new show. You're actually featured on it. You have a segment of your own. It is a mix between Dear Abby and Post Secrets. So people will submit their questions. We'll either give them advice. You give people really terrible advice, and it's actually becoming a fan favorite. We just added a new segment with Josh Hallmark, who hosts our Americana, Karen Ellen Letters playlist, and he does drunk advice with Josh. And then we have a portion of the show that really focuses on secrets, so people can write in anonymous secrets. My pod friends will read them and we discuss them.
Yes, it's very fun. I like doing the bad advice. And then you also have Charlie from Insight. She does
Yes.
parent, family, marriage advice. And then you kind of take whatever advice falls between them.
Whatever is left.
Yeah. It's really fun. I'm not going to lie, it's like the podcast I look the most forward to.
No,
I
that's also narcissistic of you because
No, I mean I skip over your parts and just play mine on repeat. But no, I really like the format and the secrets are so fun.
They are funny. We have some really good ones coming up for the next episode.
I'm excited. I like that you have different podcasts read the secret, so it's fun to get everyone involved and hear somebody in Australia read a secret. And it's
It is
very
a lot
fun.
of fun.
Yeah. And then I have to say my favorite episode of True Crime Fan Club podcast is obviously the Albert Fish one. Because
You would.
you take so much pleasure in reading his letters. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh. I know. I can't get enough. It is what I do best.
No. For real though, I love that you cover cases that aren't super well known. Like, I think my favorite of yours so far is, and I'm forgetting the woman's name, but the one who was lit on fire in her dorm room.
Cady Autry.
Yeah, that one had some twists and turns and
Yeah, that was a surprise. And one of my listeners actually dated the guy who ended up killing her. And she doesn't really see him as a person who would have done something like that, but she knew him when he was like 14. So, I mean, a lot can
wow.
change.
Yeah. I mean, I just like that you don't cover the big hitters, which, I mean, sometimes I do, but it's fun to hear about the cases that not everyone is talking about.
Right. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Where can listeners find you?
So you can find True Crime Fan Club at truecrimefanclub.com. All the social media links are there. You can find We're All Just Pretending on allpretendingpod.com. Again, the social media links are there, and the shows are on all podcast players.
Well, thank you for being my road trip buddy.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
So, we're going to be snacking on Belgian chocolate truffles for this car ride, and that's because Prairie Village, where the story is going to end up taking us, their sister city is actually in Belgium. And then our second snack is going to be a special edition goldfish cracker, and they're called the Princess Goldfish Crackers, and they're just pink goldfish. And that's going to represent Kate, who we're going to learn about in the story, her love of ballet. And we're going to make our way to Prairie Village, Kansas, in the suburb of Kansas City, to discuss Debra Green. So, Lainey, what made you pick Debra Green for today's trip?
You know, I was really intrigued by her utter lack of emotion over the crime she committed. I don't want to give too much away. And I told you earlier, I was re-listening to the really short audiobook that they have. And I was just, really flabbergasted and amazed by this person who is clearly mentally ill and how much she was able to get away with and how much she was she was just a huge force, and it just kind of threw me for a loop. And I think the listeners will be really shocked about what they hear later on in the episode.
I agree. I definitely was.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, are you ready to go?
Yes, start her up.
We lost the station again.
Keep trying.
Hold on. Let me try this one.
Stop. That's it. Turn it up. Turn it up. Debra Green was born in Havana, Illinois on February 28, 1951. Her parents were Joan and Bob Jones, and she had an older sister. In high school, Debra was a National Merit Scholar. She was also the co-valedictorian at her graduation, and when they tested her IQ, they found that it was 165, which is really high.
Yeah, that's insane.
And when she was in school, she found that she didn't have to study. Everything just came easy to her. She could just do her schoolwork, and she didn't have to, like I said, she didn't have to study. She would just go home and read books. She didn't, like, just fictional books. She didn't need to read her textbooks or anything like that. She went to the University of Illinois for her undergrad in 1969, and she majored in chemistry, and she was able to graduate just 3 years later in 1972.
Wow.
After receiving her undergrad, Debra moved to Kansas to attend the University of Kansas School of Medicine in 1972. She was able to graduate med school in 3 years.
Holy crap. That's a really short time.
Yeah. And she picked emergency medicine as her specialty. And she took a residency at Truman Medical Center in the emergency room. So while she was going to KU, which is what we call Kansas University, she met an engineer named Debra Green, and they were married. And then they both moved to Independence, Missouri, so she could finish her residency at Truman Medical Center. But their marriage didn't last long. They were separated and divorced in 1978 because they just found they had nothing in common. The divorce was friendly. There wasn't any fighting or anything like that. They were just, I think it was more like they were just friends who thought they needed to get married to have that perfect American picket fence house. But then they were just like,
Just kidding.
yeah.
Debra met Michael Farrar during the last year of medical school. He was actually 4 years younger than she was. He saw an immediate red flag with her. For example, her temper was unbelievable. She would get extremely angry and had a hair-trigger temper. She would get angry over little things like someone parking in her parking space that she wanted. And Michael overlooked Debra's temper because he loved her intelligence and wit way more. They ended up getting married on May 26, 1979. Debra opted to keep Green as her last name for professional reasons, and it didn't seem like Michael was too happy with that from what I remember. But on their wedding night, Debra didn't want to have sex with him. She wanted to actually just read a book. And after some coaxing, so begging his wife, basically, she did have sex with him. And when they were done, she went back to reading her book. And this is really, really important to note because her non-interest in sex would continue throughout their marriage.
Wow. That's a really major red flag that this woman gets angry over everything.
Yes. And I remember hearing that whenever they got married, Michael felt like the day of their wedding that he was making this really huge mistake. And he thought that, with time, things will smooth out. It's just a getting to know each other kind of period. And I think that everybody who's maybe a newlywed or about to get married thinks that, you may like, oh my God, am I making a mistake when I'm getting married? And then you get married and you're like, oh, everything's great. No, I made the right choice. But it's so telling to me that he still went along with getting married, even though he had these really, these red flags going off, and then the gut feeling of like, this isn't a good choice. And then the wedding night happens, and, I think for me that solidifies that it wasn't a good choice. They just weren't compatible in that way.
No, and that makes me really sad that he felt like he had to settle.
Yeah.
Michael ended up taking a residency in internal medicine at the University of Cincinnati in Ohio. So, because her husband was taking a residency in a different state, Debra ended up moving with him, and she took a job as an ER physician in a Jewish hospital. And she didn't enjoy it, so she switched her specialties. And she started a second residency in Michael's internal medicine program. And around this time, Debra started suffering some medical issues. For instance, she had surgery on an infected wrist. She started having intense migraines and insomnia. And these medical issues are going to continue.
They had their first child on January 20th, 1982. His name was Tim. He wasn't a planned pregnancy at all. I think, in fact, they had been married for a couple years and had unprotected sex before Debra even got pregnant. She took a 6-week maternity leave to stay home with her newborn, but when her leave was up, she returned back to her fellowship in hematology and oncology. In 1984, Debra gave birth to their second child, Kate. And not much is known about Kate, and this is most likely to keep her identity secret and as safeguarded as possible. Debra did take a maternity leave with Kate, the same way she did with Tim. But when her leave was finished, Debra could not wait to get back to her fellowship. Being a stay-at-home mom was just not for her.
Yeah, what she was good at was memorizing things and doing her job.
Yeah, I heard that a lot, that she like Rain Man things.
When it came to school, she was always great at it. That's what she was good at, but anything else, relationships, basically, if she had to take her nose out of a book, it just didn't work.
Yeah.
After returning to her fellowship, Debra was able to finish in 1985, and then she went into private practice in hematology and oncology. But she was not certified in either of those fields, which is really creepy.
Yeah, I heard in the book, the book is very interesting, that because she was so involved in novels and everything, that she never read for her board exams. And that's why she
No.
failed. And I have friends who are in medical school. One of my best friends is in medical school right now, and his whole life is studying for this, and he's very smart. So it amazes me that she was so confident in her ability to absorb and obtain this information that she wouldn't even bother studying. And I think she even blamed Michael and was like, well, it's because I have to take care of these kids and I couldn't study, and it's your fault. Like she shifted the blame from herself back to her husband and her kids.
Right. If you don't have to look within, it's so much easier.
Very much so.
So Michael and Debra ended up moving back to Kansas City, and they both joined medical practices in the Kansas City, Missouri area. But within a year, Debra was not asked to continue working at the private practice, even though Michael was. So she started her own private practice. And her private practice remained successful until she had her third child, Kelly, on December 13th, 1988. She also took a maternity leave with Kelly. After having both Tim and Kate, Debra was able to lose her baby weight really easily, and she was looking, slim, and
she got that snapback body.
Yeah. If you look at pictures of Debra Green now, it is hard to believe that she was ever a thin, attractive woman.
Right. She is rough.
But from what I've heard, and from all accounts, she was pretty. She was very charming. She was very witty. And she always cared about her appearance. But after having her third child, she was unable to lose weight. And she just gave up on her appearance completely. She cut all of her hair off in this unattractive hairstyle. She started wearing these prescription glasses instead of contacts, and they were super thick. And she just started dressing in unflattering clothes and just gave up.
So due to an increase in chronic pain after she finished her maternity leave with Kelly, Debra stopped running her practice. She officially cut ties with the private practice in 1992, and instead of working full time somewhere else, maybe, she just decided to stay home and care for the children, which is very strange because when they were all, especially Tim and Kate, when they were first born, she couldn't wait to get back to work. And now she just is so willing to give it up, which I think is really one of the telltale signs of her spiral downwards, because she's starting, and her depression probably, because she's starting to give up on her appearance and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, she did end up taking a part-time job working from home on medical peer reviews and processing Medicaid, something that was really kind of benign and nothing really challenging. It was just easy work for her.
I definitely think you're right that this is her start of her spiral down because, like you said, with Tim and Kate, she could not wait to get back to work. And she'd worked so hard. She finished medical school in 3 years. She had multiple fellowships. She started her own private practice. This woman has only cared about her education her entire life. And then,
Right, and then she's just done.
yeah, and to give up on your private practice, that's just crazy. And then she's staying home, which would already be difficult for her. But she starts staying at home and doesn't leave.
She's like a hermit.
So that's going to make you more depressed. Yeah. At the time of quitting her private practice, Debra became obsessed with Michael. She wanted to know where he was, what he was doing, and she also changed her behavior toward her children. She would tell her children how awful Michael was. Like, your dad is working so much because he doesn't want to spend any time with us. And her attitude toward Michael undermined anything he said to the children because if their dad is so awful, why would they pick their dad's side or why would they listen to their dad? And she basically made her children hate their dad. And this ended up leading to a physical altercation with Tim. And I think the altercation was that Tim said something rude to his dad.
He called him a motherfucker.
Okay.
His dad was like, "This is it."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that was kind of a breaking point there. And then due to her chronic pain, Debra unfortunately developed a habit for sedatives and narcotics. And while she was running her private practice, she would even steal her patients' prescriptions. And Michael would find these pill bottles all over with her patients' names. And he would be like, "You're going to lose your license." And she would say she would stop, "Oh, I'm going to stop this time. I won't take the pills anymore." But she never did.
Right. And I think I remember when she first started doing it, before he was kind of catching on, he saw them and was like, "Hey, why do you have these pills in somebody else's name?" And she's like, "Oh, I must have inadvertently put them in my coat pocket, on accident. I'll make sure that they get it back tomorrow." And he was like, "Oh, okay." And I feel so bad for him because he was so naive about her. And he couldn't see that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the kids were already old enough. He couldn't see this pattern of behavior becoming an issue. And I think maybe later on, once it gets to this level, he starts to realize, "Oh, crap. I made a mistake for a really long time."
Yeah, and now my mistake is affecting 3 children.
Right.
And because of the marriage problems, Michael began working long hours to avoid Debra. And because Michael wasn't home in the evenings, Debra was the one to take the kids to the extracurricular activities. And Debra and Michael, when they were around each other, often fought because Debra wasn't great at being a stay-at-home mom. When you think of a stay-at-home parent, you think that that parent is typically the one that keeps the house running, right? Because they're home all day. Well, Debra didn't get the memo. She didn't cook and she didn't keep the house together. And so she wanted to hire like a housekeeper and she wanted all this stuff. And Michael's like, "You're home all day long while I work really long hours. Why would I pay for that?"
I'm with Debra on this one, though. I would be the same way. Would be like,
Yeah.
"No, I'm gonna need that still." And I have a friend who treats staying at home as their job. She says, I approach it like I'm at work. So my job is to keep the house in order and to make sure, like the baby's fed and, clean, whatever. And I think that's a really interesting take on it. I would not be that way. Like, I would make sure the kids clean and fine. Um, and they're like play areas clean, but I'm not gonna clean the bathrooms when the kid's napping. I'm probably gonna go to sleep.
Right. And I can see Deborah's point of view as well because she's doing a lot for the children.
Right.
She's running them all over to school, and the kids went to private school, so they had a ton of like extra things to do, and she was, probably helping out at the school. But that was an area of tension for both of them.
So in January of 1994, Michael finally asked Debra for a divorce. Deborah's first thought was that Michael was having an affair, and of course she got very angry and accused him of this. So Michael decided, you know what, it's time to move out, so he moved out of the family home and into his own apartment. The couple still kept in contact. They needed to be good co-parents because they shared custody of their 3 children, but Debra never made that communication easy. She still turned the kids on him. She would say, your daddy left us because he doesn't love us anymore. He's a terrible dad and he doesn't want us to be, okay. And the kids would basically take Deborah's side because they didn't know any better. That's all they heard their entire life.
Yeah. It's hard to pick which one of these parents is worse, but my goodness.
Yeah.
The manipulation with her children is just too much.
Yeah, that's really bad. That's what I like. That's what I hate. On a scale of all the things that she's going to do, this is probably the least thing I like about her. And that's saying a lot because she did a lot of terrible things.
Mm-hmm. So while they were separated, they tried working on their marriage. They figured that staying in different areas would help them because the house they lived in was kind of cramped. I mean, they had 3 children, so I can imagine that they didn't have a ton of room. And they were separated for 4 months before they thought, this is going well. Let's go ahead and get a bigger house. That should ease the stress of us living in these close quarters. That's going to fix our marriage, right? The couple picked out a house in Prairie Village. And Prairie Village is like, I would call it a swanky area of Kansas City, especially at that time. There were expensive houses, a lot of doctors living there, so it made sense to move there. But they backed out because Michael was worried about undertaking such a large financial commitment. I mean, he was the only one working full time. They have these 3 children going to private school.
I think the house payment, like the down payment for that house was like $200,000.
It was an expensive house.
Yeah.
Well, one day, the house they were living at, the small one on West 61st Street, caught on fire due to a power cord while the family was out of the house. Now, that's what the firefighters determined, but they said it was a weird fire, like not what they would normally see with a power cord.
Yeah, that was really, really, really weird. On purpose weird.
The house was repairable, but the family moved into the apartment that Michael had lived in while they were separated, and the house sustained $85,000 in damages. So with their family home burned, they decided to go ahead and buy that Prairie Village house they were looking at. How weird that Debra ends up getting the house she wanted.
How convenient.
So they bought the Prairie Village house, and it was a 6-bedroom, $500,000 mansion, which is just a large house. But here in Kansas, we're like, that's a mansion! And it was on Canterbury Lane. It had a pool, an exercise room, a 4-car garage, and more. So it was big for their family, not what they were used to. And to make the marriage work, Michael said he would try to work less hours, and Debra said she would try to learn how to cook and keep the house clean. But it didn't last long. By the end of 1994, the marriage was back to its old ways.
Not surprising, given Debra's pattern of behavior.
No.
Now, in the summer of 1995, Michael, Debra, and Tim went to Peru on a school trip. The other children stayed back with other family members. While on the trip to Peru, Michael met Margaret Hacker. Margaret was a married woman whose children went to the same private school as Tim, and if you're thinking what I'm thinking, you're on the right track. She was unhappy with her marriage to her husband, an anesthesiologist. And after getting back from Peru, Michael and Margaret started having an affair. Surprise, surprise. The family returns back from Peru, and Michael approaches Debra again, asking about a divorce. Of course, Debra responds in Debra fashion and throws a huge fit. She told the children that their father was leaving them and that he didn't care about them or love them. So after he asks her this, Debra starts drinking a lot, a liter or more of liquor a day, and that is a ton. If you've ever seen a liter, she went through that in a day. So she was really drinking heavily. She would sometimes be passed out when the kids were at home. And this is what I was telling Haley. This is what I was so astounded by, is that this woman primarily has custody, physical custody of these 3 kids. They're still rather young, and she drinks herself to a stupor to where she passes out. And typically she passes out on the bed half naked, and they just get so scared and worried about their mom. And sometimes they call their dad and are like, hey, can't wake mom up. Can you come and check on her? And that happened a lot. And it's really sad to see that Debra was either in so much pain or very selfish or a combination of the two things, that she couldn't put her children's safety and mental security first. Because of Debra's behavior, Michael did not immediately move out of the family home. He was really worried about the kids, and he wanted to make sure that they were still safe.
Which I thought was a really selfless move on his part. I mean, he did not want to be around this woman.
Yeah, he couldn't stand it.
But he was like, oh, I'm going to have to stay here because she's just a mess. On August 11th, 1995, Michael got sick after he ate a chicken salad sandwich that Debra made him. He had nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. He thought it was some sort of bug that he caught from Peru. He let it go for 7 days before he was finally hospitalized on the 18th with severe dehydration and high fever. While he was hospitalized, he ended up with sepsis, but he was able to recover and was finally released on the 25th. That night, after he was released on the 25th, he went home and he ate a meal that Debra cooked for him. Then he got sick again and he had to be readmitted to the hospital. And he was finally released 5 days later on the 30th. After being released on the 30th, he went home, ate another meal prepared by Debra, and immediately got sick again and was rehospitalized. While he was hospitalized, the doctors could not figure out what was wrong with him. They had a checklist of things like, oh my gosh, it could be this, but your symptoms don't really fit that to a T, or it could be this, but once again, your symptoms don't really fit that. And he was finally released from the hospital on September 11th. When he returned home from the hospital, Michael was really worried about Debra's behavior. He thought that she might be taking the pills again, so he started searching the house on September 25th. He went through her purse and he found that she had castor beans and vials of potassium chloride. He thought she was trying to commit suicide with the potassium chloride because if you inject enough of that, you'll die. So he questioned her the next day, and after their conversation, he decided to call the police and have his wife committed to a mental hospital. She was taken to the hospital, but said she did not want to commit suicide. When Michael showed up, she immediately changed. She spit on him, she called him names, and at one point she said, out of nowhere for no reason, "You'll get these kids over our dead bodies," which is totally weird. She ended up checking herself out of the emergency room without telling anyone, and she was found a few hours later just walking home from the hospital. And at that point, she voluntarily said she would go to the Menninger Clinic in Topeka. While she was at Menninger's, she was diagnosed with major bipolar depression with suicidal impulses and was sent home after 4 days.
Back to the castor beans that were in Debra's purse. Michael kept thinking about those. He ended up looking up the beans in old textbooks, and he figured out that a person could extract ricin from the beans, which is a poison. After figuring out that Debra had been poisoning him with the castor beans, Michael moved into his own apartment. He didn't worry about the kids' safety at this point. He only was worried about his. He didn't think that Debra would hurt the children. At this time, Margaret also filed for divorce from her husband. Her husband moved into a new home, and a short time after moving, Margaret found her estranged husband dead in his car in the garage. He had committed suicide by injecting himself with anesthesia.
So now we've arrived to the day of Debra's infamous crimes. We just want you to be aware that there's going to be some descriptions of violence against children. On October 24th, 1995, Debra and Michael's middle child, Kate, called 911 and hung up because she couldn't hear anything over alarms. This was around 12:20 a.m. Police showed up to the house and called the fire department at 12:27. The fire department showed up and found Debra and 10-year-old Kate outside. Both were wearing their night clothes. Kate told firefighters that her 6-year-old sister Kelly and her 13-year-old brother Timothy were still inside. And later, police would describe Debra as standing next to Kate and acting very calm and very cool. 2 firefighters attempted to search inside the home, but they couldn't because the structure was unsafe. When the fire was finally under control, only the garage and some stones were left. Because the fire spread so quickly, the firefighters were suspicious. So Debra and Michael were taken into the police department and questioned separately. While questioning Debra, she told the police that it had been a normal day. The children went to school and they attended their after-school activities. And the family was all home by 9 o'clock that evening. She had 1 or 2 drinks at dinner and then went straight to bed. But she left her room to talk to Tim in the kitchen sometime between 10 and 11 p.m. before he headed off to bed. Both the girls had gone to bed at that point. Debra fell asleep at 11:30, but right before going to sleep, she talked to Michael because he said someone paged him from the house. And while in her interview, she also told police that she was going through a divorce with Michael, but she wasn't upset. She was looking forward to starting over again, which could not be farther from the truth.
The smoke got to her brain.
After talking to Michael on the phone, she said that she went back to sleep and she woke up after midnight when she heard the house fire alarm go off. She thought it was a false alarm. She tried to turn it off with the control panel in her bedroom, but it wouldn't go off. So she opened her door and she found smoke in the hallway. Because she couldn't go into the hallway, she was able to get out of the house via the deck that was connected to her bedroom. While she was on the deck, she heard Tim call to her over their intercom system and asking what he should do. She told Tim that he should stay in the house and wait for firefighters to come rescue him. She left her deck and she went to knock on her neighbor's door and asked them to call 911. She left her neighbor's house and went back to her own house and found Kate, who had climbed through her bedroom window onto the roof of the garage. Kate was like, "What do I do?" And Debra told her to jump. She would catch her, but she didn't catch her. Kate landed on the ground in front of her. During her interview, Debra was calm and didn't cry. She was even talkative and cheerful. Debra referred to her children in the interview in the past tense. She referred to them by their ages instead of their names, like, "He used to be my 13-year-old. But what's interesting here is that she didn't know at this point that her children had passed away. Why would she be talking about them in the past tense? And accounts of what she did prior to going to bed varied. She didn't stick with the same story. By 5:30 a.m., detectives came into the interrogation room and told her that Tim and Kelly had been found dead inside the home. Debra got mad and said the firefighters didn't try to save her children. She instantly became uncooperative and demanded that she and Michael see the remains of their house. She also demanded to be able to tell Michael herself that, quote, "Our babies are dead." Police did not let her tell Michael. She was released early October 24th after questioning. She was a suspect, but they didn't have enough to charge her, so they just released her.
Yeah, I think it's so cruel about her telling Tim just to stay there and wait.
I cannot imagine a mother doing that, or anybody doing that.
Yeah, and imagine this kid's 13 years old, terrified, and you're going to the person who you expect to have all the answers, which is your mom. And your mom is telling you, "No, just stay there, they'll come and get you." And you don't think anything of it, and you lose your life because of it, and that's not supposed to happen.
No. And I'm not a mom, but I can imagine that all she saw was smoke. Don't you think she would have tried to save her kids?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would have. Like, I mean, wouldn't you save your dogs? You would try and be like, oh, okay,
Oh
let me
my
find my
God, yeah.
dogs. I mean, it's not the same, but that fear or that rush of fear that you get, that adrenaline of this is an emergency. I need to make sure, either my kids are safe or my pets are safe, depending on which ones you have. Obviously, if you have kids, you're going to check on your children first, but I can't see myself or put myself in Deborah's shoes and be like, oh, there's smoke. I should run out the house. Oh, this kid, she didn't even call for them. She didn't yell for them. She wasn't like, hey, Tim, hey, blah, blah, blah. Make sure you get out. Like, get out. She was only thinking about herself. And it was very clear at that moment because she looked out, saw the smoke, and was like, better go. And then decides
Mm.
to exit and does nothing to save her kids.
I can see maybe seeing the smoke and being like, oh, I could die of smoke inhalation. Let me go to the deck and then try to break the window to get my son's attention. Like, let me try to save them from but just not doing anything at all. That is so suspicious.
Yeah, and it's very, very callous and
I feel like it
cruel.
goes against our human nature.
It really does. I mean, people who always lose their kids are always saying like you're not supposed to bury a child, but I think that if they were given the opportunity to save their kid, knowing the pain that they feel losing them, that they would 100% take that advantage and be like, or that opportunity and say, I'm going to save my kid. I would 100%. Most parents would rather lose their own life than
Mm-hmm.
have their kid die. So this whole scenario for me and her retelling of it makes zero sense from a human factor and also just like a mom factor.
Oh, yeah. When Michael was talking to police, he told them that on the day of the fire, he had taken the day off from work. He dropped the children off at home by around 8:45 p.m. Then he headed to dinner with Margaret and left her house at 11:15 p.m. While he was with Margaret, Deborah paged him at 10:35 to see what he was doing. Then she paged him again 5 minutes later, and on her third page, Michael ignored her. They talked on the phone at around 11:40 p.m., and Michael said that Deborah sounded drunk. He lost it, and he told her that he knew she had poisoned him and that he might have to call social services to protect the children if she didn't get it together. After their phone call, Michael watched TV in his apartment until he got a phone call from a neighbor telling him that his house was on fire. That was around 12:25 a.m. Michael immediately jumped in his car and drove over there. He only lived like a few minutes away. And he also told police that he thought Deborah might have set the house on fire to gain money from insurance because she was constantly complaining about not having enough money. But he didn't think she would ever hurt the children. And police recalled his eyes being red and his voice trembling during his talk with the police. So basically, the opposite of Deborah being calm, cool, and collected. He was acting the way that police would expect a man whose house just burned down and whose children just died.
Now it was Kate's turn to be interviewed by detectives. Her grandparents sat in the room with her for support and because she needed an adult present. Kate told detectives that she woke up when the fire was already going. She saw smoke entering her room, so she opened her bedroom door and called out to her brother. She then closed the door and called 911, but she couldn't hear the dispatcher because the alarms were too loud, so she hung up the phone. Kate then crawled out of her bedroom window, out onto the garage, and that's when she saw her mother, and her mother told her to just jump. Kate jumped, and like Haley said earlier, she didn't catch her, but she landed safely on the ground.
After all of their interviews were over, Deborah told Michael that she had nowhere to go, but Michael was like, "You're not staying in my apartment."
Smart?
Yeah. Instead, he gave her cash so she could get a hotel room, which he didn't have to do that.
No, it's
But
very nice.
yeah. Deborah's divorce lawyer ended up showing up there to check on her and found her in a distraught state and had her transported to a hospital due to her unstable emotions. After the fire, Michael immediately filed for divorce and for custody of Kate. Temporary custody of Kate was actually given to Michael's parents because police, were still investigating them. Debra was able to have supervised visits with Kate, and Michael was able to have unsupervised visits. So I think that speaks a lot to what police thought of Debra.
And I think it's important, right, to mention that Michael was still debilitated over the poisoning and the systematic poisoning that Debra had inflicted upon him. So even if he wanted to take care of the kids, I don't think he physically would have been able to. And,
No.
I think it's good that his parents were able to take over that role and help him so that he could still have a relationship with Kate. But Debra had done so much damage to him. It's insane. And for him to still pony up cash for her to go sleep in a hotel room, it amazes me. I wouldn't. I'd be like, sleep in your car, I don't care. Sleep on the street, I don't care. You're nothing to me. But, I guess that speaks to Michael's personality and his nature of being kind.
Yeah. Timothy and Kelly's bodies were recovered the morning after the fire when it was cool enough to search the house. An autopsy showed that Kelly died in her bed from smoke inhalation, so she didn't suffer. She basically died in her sleep, which is great. Timothy was not so lucky. He died in or near his bedroom from smoke inhalation and heat. He had tried to get out, like we talked about earlier. He was out of bed asking his mom how he should get out of the house. And he died as he was trying to make his way out of the house. His body fell through the flooring and landed near the kitchen.
Oh man, that sucks. That's very tough.
Yeah. Because the fire spread so quickly, the fire was considered to be suspicious. So arson investigators immediately went to the house to begin their investigation. They were able to rule out all the common causes of accidental fires. Investigators found that 2 small fires had occurred, and then there was one big fire. The fire was started in the doorway of the master bedroom, and they were able to find that Debra's door was in fact open during the fire, which contradicts her statement that the bedroom door was closed and then she went to open it and saw smoke. They found pour patterns on the ground and second floors. The pour patterns covered many areas on the ground floor. They also blocked the stairway from the second floor to the ground floor. They covered much of the hallway on the second floor, which is where the children slept. And it stopped at the door of the master bedroom. Arson investigators never figured out what liquid was used, but they knew it was flammable. And they were able to determine that 3 to 10 gallons of the liquid were used. At the end of their investigation, they concluded that the fire was arson. I found this really interesting. During their search, investigators found a book in the master bedroom called Necessary Lies. And this is a book about children dying in a house fire that was intentionally set. This was a library book, so police actually got a record of other books that she had checked out. And they found other books about intrafamilial homicide. At this point, police knew that the fire was set intentionally, so that makes the 2 deaths homicides. They called in a new task force on October 26th. They took samples of Michael and Debra's hair and clothing to find remnants of the flammable liquid. They didn't find anything on either person's clothing. Michael's hair had no singeing, but they did find that Debra's hair had been cut 2 times since the fire. And even though she had had her hair cut 2 times, her hair still showed significant signs of singeing. And this is important because Debra said she was never near the flames, right? She just was near the smoke. And when police interviewed the neighbors said that Debra had come to the door with her hair soaking wet, which who would have time to wet their hair if they were already asleep and woke up to the sound of the alarms?
Right, and who was asleep with soaking wet hair?
Yeah. So, police suspicions were set on Debra. During his police interview, Michael told the police that Debra had possibly been poisoning him with castor beans. police started looking into the purchases. They found that Debra had bought castor beans in Olathe, which is outside of Kansas City, on either September 20th or September 22nd, right before the poisonings began.
On November 22nd, Debra was dropping Kate off at her ballet practice when she was arrested. At her arraignment, Debra was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of Tim and Kelly, and 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder for almost killing Kate and Michael via poison. 1 count of aggravated arson was also charged against her for obvious reasons, the house fire. Debra was held on a $3 million bond, which was the highest bond in Kansas City at the time.
Lainey mentioned earlier that Michael's health was not doing well because of the poisoning. Even though he had been released from the hospital, he was still suffering so many illnesses. And he had to undergo surgery in November 1995 to treat an aneurysm he received from the poisoning. And just to make sure that Debra had indeed poisoned him, Michael received testing sometime between November 17th and the 22nd. The testing proved that he had indeed been poisoned with ricin. During the preliminary trial, the defense said that the fire was not started by Debra, but it was actually started by Tim. Tim was an easy target because, 1, he was not alive to defend himself, and 2, he had once been caught setting off Molotov cocktails. And the defense also blamed the ricin poisoning on Tim because he did a lot of cooking in the home. During the preliminary trial, Michael had to undergo another surgery in December of 1995 for an abscess in his brain, also caused by the poisoning. Because the prosecution was afraid he wouldn't survive the surgery, they filmed his testimony before he went into surgery. Luckily, he survived and was able to testify in person. After the preliminary trial was over, Debra's arraignment was set for February 8, 1996, with a trial to start in the summer. The prosecution requested the death penalty, and Debra underwent a lot of psychological evaluations. And the judge ruled that she could have 1 trial for all of the charges. Before her trial was set to begin, Debra told her lawyers that she did set the fire, but she didn't pour any accelerants and she didn't mean to kill her children. She also told her lawyer that she and Tim poisoned Michael together. Her lawyers then suggested that she take a plea deal due to the physical evidence. On April 17th, Debra did just that. She pled no contest to all charges in order to avoid the death penalty. She faced a minimum sentence of 40 years without the possibility of parole.
Can I just say, screw Debra?
Mm-hmm.
Like using your dead son to take the blame, take the fall. And then you want to say, well, okay, I set the fire, but Tim helped me poison his father.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, maybe that did happen. Maybe she did, coerce him into helping her, like either deliver the food or poison her, say, hey, yeah, I'm poisoning your dad. Because think of how long she systematically ingrained in their heads that their dad was a terrible person.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you grow up thinking that, then, you are going to be loyal to your mom and you're going to do whatever your mom says. And if it helps, hurt your dad, which makes your mom happy, then that's what you're going to do as a kid. She's just like a terrible, terrible person. I can't stand her. So I did this to myself.
I agree.
On May 30th, 1996, Debra was sentenced to 2 concurrent 40-year sentences. She would receive credit for the 191 days she had already served. At the sentencing, one of the psychologists that evaluated Debra testified that her emotional maturity was that of a 1-year-old. She was a grown woman pretending to be a grown-up. She didn't have the ability to cope with adult things like most people who age into maturity do.
Lainey and I have discussed this extensively over the last couple of weeks. And I've talked to a few of my friends that have more of a background in psychology than I do, and they kind of explained this as if she had no self-esteem. She did not look at herself as a person. The only thing she was ever good at was school. But anything outside of that, she had no ability to have relationships with people. When we look at the emotional maturity of a 1-year-old, I think it makes sense that Michael would piss her off and then she would be like, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to kill your kids. Like, she did not think like a normal person. She didn't really see that her actions have consequences.
Yes, I think that's accurate right there.
That's really upsetting.
Yeah. I mean, you think of a 1-year-old, right? I've known some 1-year-olds in my time. My nieces were one. And, at that age, they don't really understand the word no and the consequences behind that. So if I tell you no and you do something, then you get punished at the level that you can punish a 1-year-old. But what ends up happening is they throw these tantrums, right? They throw themselves on the ground. They're screaming and crying in the grocery store. And I think I recall earlier in the book, it's saying like Debra didn't care where she made a scene when she had an outburst, right? So think about that. Your kid isn't conscious or aware that they're in a grocery store full of people who do not want to hear them screaming loudly. And they're going to do it anyway because that's the emotion that they feel. They're angry or they're upset or they don't understand why mom said no. So I think it's a really interesting parallel for Debra to not care about where she makes these emotional outbursts, and then also tying it to what the psychologist says, who says, she doesn't have any clue about how to be an adult. She doesn't have the emotional intelligence on how to be an adult. Does it excuse what she did? To me, no.
I agree. I know I've talked about this in past episodes, but Kansas does not have the not guilty by reason of insanity plea. And I wonder that if we did, if that's what she would have tried to plead. Because if she doesn't have the emotional ability to understand her actions, then she might have a good case for that. I have a hard time saying that it excuses her behavior because I don't think it does. I just think it's really interesting to try to put yourself in her shoes, and it's so unfathomable to think that a woman would set her house on fire and kill her children without truly understanding truly understanding the weight of her actions. I think she totally cognizantly set the house on fire. But I don't think she realized, oh, I'm actually going to kill my children.
The consequence.
She was just being immature and trying to get back at her husband. And you know what, Debra? Your consequences do have actions.
But here's a question I have, and maybe for those who are like counselors and stuff like that. Is there an opportunity, or was there an opportunity for Debra to gain that emotional intelligence? Right? So you know how you do like cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever? Was that possible for her?
That's a good question.
So if you guys know, let us know. Especially let me know. I think that's what kind of piques my curiosity there with that. So, okay, I definitely understand mental illness and totally know that it can cause you to do things that if you were in the right state of mind, you wouldn't do. Right? So if we're saying, okay, she has this emotional intelligence of a 1-year-old, well, then is there an opportunity, or was there some type of therapy or counseling that would have, progressed her emotional age?
Right. Or was she stunted?
Yeah. I mean, is that a forever thing? Is she like, 65 right? Is that a forever thing? Is she 65 right now and still at the 1-year-old emotional intelligence level?
That's a really good question. I never learned about somebody like her when I was going to school. Like, I never learned about somebody having the emotional maturity of a 1-year-old, especially somebody who has the IQ of as high as she did.
Yeah, and granted, it's 1996, so things have changed since then. So maybe it's seen differently now. Maybe there's a new term, like there's always a new term for something. Maybe that happened. I don't know.
Yeah.
but it's weird.
Well, what we do know is that Debra Green is currently incarcerated in the Topeka Correctional Facility. She started her sentence in isolation in the maximum security wing, and while she was there, she talked to Kate once a week on the phone. She also wrote letters to Michael's sister to apologize. She also wrote letters to Kate when she wasn't talking to her on the phone, but in her letters, she still talked bad about Michael. She could not help herself. And she also told Kate that her brother Tim was the one that poisoned Michael. And she wrote 3 letters to Michael. He never responded, and she finally stopped. Debra Green's earliest release date is November 21st, 2035.
So, where's everyone else? Kate moved in with Michael, and Michael ended up splitting up with Margaret because he felt he had to pick between Kate and her. Michael continued to have more surgeries to treat the injuries he sustained from the poisoning, and in the year following his first poisoning, Michael had 11 hospitalizations. The Prairie Village house was completely destroyed in the fire. The remains were demolished, and nearby neighbors purchased the plot. And I believe Michael is still practicing in the Kansas area. I think I Googled him and saw he still is practicing. I couldn't really find anything on Kate, and I definitely 100% respect her privacy because this is such a sad thing to go through. I've lost a sibling myself, and we were 3, right? So going from 3 to 2 is really strange to kind of navigate, but I could not imagine going from 3 to 1. And to me, that it's a terrible pain to go through, but I 100% respect her privacy. Like, if she doesn't ever want to talk about it or, just doesn't want to be known, then, leave her alone.
Yeah, I agree. You can find more information about Debra Green in Anne Rule's book, Bitter Harvest. So I have a couple questions. Do you think that Debra started that first house fire?
Oh, 100%.
In order to...
Don't even finish your question. 100%. The fact that cord was wrapped super tight around that copper wire, how else does that happen?
Mm-hmm.
No, I 100% think she did that. And I think it was just to get the Prairie Village house so she could have her way.
Yeah, because a 1-year-old wants their way and they want it now.
Yeah. And no offense to the 1-year-olds listening. You all aren't that terrible. There are some very cute 1-year-olds out there. So we're not bashing 1-year-olds.
Yeah, at least 1-year-olds are cute. Debra wasn't cute.
No, oh my gosh. I feel so bad because she was really pretty. Like, she took care of herself. She took pride in her appearance. And then just after Kelly, and even now, I mean, if you look for a current mugshot of her, because, the prison periodically does that, she's rough. And she's still kind of wearing those same, like, Coke bottle glasses and stuff. And I know they, like, issue glasses and stuff in prison. They're not supposed to be, like, for cosmetic reasons. But at least they try. And I think I don't know. I mean, I'm glad she's there 100%, but it's still so weird to see, pictures of her from a younger day to now or to during the trial.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a stark difference. And I think you're going to post some on your Instagram, aren't you?
Yeah. So do you have any final thoughts on Debra Green?
I don't like her. No.
You've made that clear.
Like I said, from the beginning, I think everybody is kind of going to be shocked by her crimes, her callousness, and her overall lack of emotion in the really brutal murder. She didn't physically harm them, meaning she didn't go choke them or stab them or anything like that. She set them up, and I think that's the worst, that this person basically planned the deaths of their kids and knew that Kate could have not made it, right? She could have easily been a victim, and she was aware enough to get out. But knowing that Debra had no intention of having her kids come out of the house, to me, speaks incredible volumes. It's just, I can't fathom that type. And I talk about some crazy people on my show. I can't fathom that. And I think that's what surprises me, is that I'm so used to talking about these really heinous crimes that happened even against children. And this one kind of got to me more, I think, because it was so deliberate and purposeful and just all around disgusting, honestly.
I agree with everything you said. And I think to your point about Kate, Debra didn't know if Kate was going to get out or if any of her 3 children would get out. From what I read, she seemed surprised to find Kate when she got back from a neighbor. Like, oh, one of you got out.
Crap. Dang it. And I think it's really weird now, too, that, like, Kate, even in her adulthood, still talks to her mom and says, like, if my mom says that this is what happened, then I believe her version of events. And I don't understand that.
Well, she was just ingrained as a child that mom is right.
Yeah. I would just think that being away, but maybe she never really got away because Debra talked to her so much. She still could keep that control over her, even into her adulthood. So I feel so bad for Kate. I really do. I feel bad for her.
Oh, I do too. I wonder what her relationship is like with her dad.
I don't know.
Now, I'm glad they have their privacy. It's better to not know, but it's just, I can't imagine what they went through after.
Yeah, and I think maybe I don't know if as a parent, I'm not one, if you give up on having that close relationship with your kid, if you just kind of accept whatever type of relationship you're going to have and know that it's not going to be this close bond that you expect it to be,
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so. Anyways, read the book.
It is good. There's
good.
A lot more information.
Yeah, you'll learn a lot.
To end the episode and to maybe make it a little lighter, would you like to play a road trip game?
Yes. I'll entertain you.
So I thought we would play some Kansas City trivia just to make it a little lighter. And which one of these 3 actors is not from the Kansas City area? Don Cheadle, Paul Rudd, or Gary Busey?
This is a setup. Gary sounds really country. Paul seems super like bump. So I'll take Don Cheadle.
You're wrong!
Damn it. Is it Gary Busey?
Yeah, he was from Texas.
I knew it! I should know that, but we probably try to forget about him on purpose.
So Paul Rudd, Jason Sudeikis, and Rob Riggle are all from the Kansas City area. And, they're in movies a lot together.
Yeah.
And then also Eric Stone Street from Modern Family is
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And then
ask me that question.
Well, too bad. One of my favorite comedians, Bridget Everett, she's from Manhattan, which is to the west of Kansas City. But there's a lot of people from here. All right. Which one of these 3 music artists is from the Kansas City area? So only one of them is from Kansas City.
Okay.
Eminem, Janis Joplin, or Nelly?
Okay, so Nelly's from St. Louis. Eminem's from Michigan, so Janis.
I tricked you.
What?
Eminem,
Kansas City, Missouri.
Eminem was born in Kansas City.
I hate you.
And he moved to Michigan. Janis Joplin and Nelly were both born in Texas, and Nelly moved and grew up in St. Louis.
Whatever. I should know that for Janis Joplin. I'm a bad Texan. I'm sorry.
You should be.
Oops.
Which one of these 3 fashion designers, I had to include this one for you, is from the Kansas City area? Tom Ford, Michael Kors, or Kate Spade?
I love Kate Spade. I don't know. I'm just going to go with Kate Spade because I love her. If you want to send me a bag, just DM me. I'm just kidding.
It is Kate Spade.
Yay.
Which one of these three authors is from the Kansas City area? Anne Rule, Gillian Flynn, or John Grisham?
Gillian Flynn.
You're right.
Yeah, I remember somebody mentioning it on the show.
Yeah, she wrote Gone Girl.
Dark Places, I think, right?
Yep, and Sharp Objects, which is my favorite.
I think I like Dark Places. That's the one where it's like the cult, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, kind of. I liked... Did you watch the movie?
The one with Charlize?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She did such a good job.
I know, and people panned that thing, and I liked it, but whatever.
I thought it...
movies, I guess.
Yeah, it was really close to the book. But anyway, she's an excellent writer. All right. Which famous cartoon character was created in Kansas City? Is it Scooby-Doo, Mickey Mouse, or Popeye?
Popeye?
Mickey Mouse, you dummy.
Oh my god. I thought Mickey Mouse was in Florida.
Walt Disney's first animation studio was located in Kansas City.
Okay, cool. That's why I hate everything Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Just kidding, I don't.
All right. What is Kansas City's nickname? Is it the wickedest little city in America, the city of fountains, or the city with a future?
Oh my god. All of them are just so overreaching. I don't know. The city with the future.
Oh my god. It's the city with a city of fountains.
Okay.
We have over 200 fountains.
Get a life, Kansas.
All right. Just two more questions.
Okay.
Which of the following three United States presidents
oh my god
was born in Kansas? Harry S. Truman, Barack Obama, or Dwight D. Eisenhower?
I don't know. Barack?
Okay. Harry S. Truman was born in Kansas. Barack Obama's grandparents live in Kansas. And Dwight D. Eisenhower was born in Texas, but grew up in Kansas.
Jeez.
Okay, last question.
Okay.
You're not having fun? It's supposed to be fun.
I'm mad because I'm losing.
Well, this is more
That's
for the
okay.
listeners.
They like to see me lose.
I do.
Yeah, you know it. Okay, go on.
All right. Why is Kansas City considered America's barbecue capital? And you don't get any choices.
I mean, because it has barbecue.
Well, you're not wrong.
Because they have like a million barbecue places that I didn't even get to eat at. I totally forgot we were supposed to do that.
It's okay. You're right. It's because we have more barbecue restaurants per capita than any other U.S. city. We have over 100 barbecue restaurants.
Jeez. So I will just combat that and say that Texas obviously is better with barbecue because we know how to barbecue because that's Texas.
All right.
So
we don't need to get into a fight.
I don't even need to taste Kansas City barbecue to know that Texas barbecue is better.
How dare you?
I'm just saying.
Well, thanks for coming along for the ride.
For sure. Thanks for inviting me. I hope to never come back again.
Mm-hmm.
Just kidding. I can't wait.
Until next time, please remember to check your back seats, and I'll see you at the next rest stop. Thank you to content editor Laura Taylor for making my research sound coherent. If you didn't already know, you can also listen to me on the We're All Just Pretending podcast, where I give bad advice on purpose. And you can also find me on the Creep episode of Playlist that came out this week. You can find Murder Road Trip at murderroadtrip.com, on Instagram and Twitter at murdertrip, and on Facebook at MRT Podcast. If you're interested in continuing the discussion, you can join the Murder Road Trip podcast group on Facebook. Make sure to check out the Murder Road Trip playlist on Spotify. You can even add songs to the playlist. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe on your podcast app of choice. If you'd like to listen to the episodes before everyone else, listen to bonus content, and get exclusive merchandise, you can check out Murder Road Trip on Patreon. September's bonus episode covered Johnny Millist, and October's bonus episode covered The Pizza Bomber. Please stay tuned after the music to hear from some other great podcasts.
Hey guys, it's Lainey, host of the True Crime Fan Club podcast. If you're a true crime addict like I am, then my podcast is for you. It's a podcast for the ultimate true crime enthusiast, giving you a glimpse into the life and crimes of the most demented minds. You won't want to miss an episode. Hi, I'm Lainey, host of the new podcast We're All Just Pretending. It's a podcast that has elements of Dear Abby with a twist of Post Secret. Every episode, I'll read listener questions and provide advice and insight as a friend. My own pod friends will even join in and offer their advice on parenting, relationships, and even give you really bad advice on purpose. Since we all have secrets to share, there'll also be a segment focusing on letting the skeletons out of your closet. If you're looking for advice or want to share a secret, head to allpretendingpod.com. And remember, we're all just pretending here.